The air outside the Ember Crown, a sleek steakhouse in the heart of Dallas, Texas, was thick with late summer heat. But it was the kind of heat that clung to your skin like a warning. Paige Harper stood frozen on the sidewalk, her phone glowing with her mother's text, "You're coming, right? We're all waiting." The words felt less like an invitation and more like a summons. Heavy with the weight of years spent trying to fit into a family that never seemed to have a place for her. Her palms were slick with sweat, her heart pounding like a drumroll before a performance she hadn't rehearsed for. She could still turn back, climb into her Tesla, and drive back to her loft in Deep Ellum. She could fake a flat tire, claim a work emergency, anything to avoid walking through those glass doors. But her mother's voice, soft and guilt-laced, echoed in her mind, tethering her to the spot. With a slow exhale, Paige straightened her shoulders and stepped inside. The interior of the Ember Crown was a study in excess, polished mahogany, velvet drapes, and a chandelier the size of a small car casting golden light across the dining room. The air smelled of seared Wagyu and old money, a scent that screamed Dallas elite. Paige's eyes scanned the room, landing on the long table near the center where her family sat, their laughter already spilling over like cheap wine. Her cousin Derek was the first to spot her, his grin spreading wide, all teeth and no warmth. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," he called out, loud enough to turn heads at nearby tables. "Thought you were too big time for us now, Forbes girl." Paige forced a smile, her lips tight, and murmured a polite, "Evening." She moved toward an empty chair at the table's end, hoping to slip in unnoticed. But her cousin Lauren's voice cut through the hum of the restaurant like a blade. "Nope," Lauren said, shaking her head with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's for Uncle Ray. You know, family." The word landed like a slap, cold and deliberate. Derek leaned forward, his chair creaking as he closed off the space. "Yeah, we're packed tonight, Paige. Grab a chair from that table over there." He waved vaguely behind her, not bothering to look. The table fell silent, no laughter, no protests. Her mother, Ellen, sat between two aunts, her gaze fixed on her wineglass, avoiding Paige's eyes. For a moment, Paige stood rooted, her pulse hammering in her ears, the weight of every familiar face around the table pressing against her chest. These were the people she'd grown up with, shared secrets with, cried in front of, loved, and now, they couldn't even spare her a seat. She turned, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she crossed to an empty table nearby. The screech of metal chair legs dragging across the stone echoed louder than she intended. But she didn't care. She placed the chair just outside their circle, not in, not out, a silent declaration of her place. Sitting down, she ordered a black coffee, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her spine rigid under the weight of curious glances from other diners. The waiter gave her a puzzled look but said nothing. Across from her, Lauren raised her glass, her voice syrupy. "To togetherness," she said, her smirk sharp enough to cut glass. A few laughs followed, not everyone, but enough to twist the knife deeper. Paige stared at her coffee, watching condensation bead and slide down the glass like tears she refused to shed. She'd always been the odd one out. As a kid, Paige was the quiet dreamer, nose buried in books while her cousins chased boys and snuck beers. She didn't party in high school, didn't chase clout in college. Instead, she built something real, a tech startup that grew from a dorm room idea to a seven-figure empire, landing her a feature in Forbes's 30 Under 30. But to her family, her success wasn't a point of pride, it was a resource. They never said it outright, too crass for their polished facades, but their actions spoke louder. The snide remarks, the subtle jabs, the way they only called when they needed something. Tonight was no different, except the stakes felt higher, the air heavier, like the prelude to a storm. The table buzzed with chatter, but none of it was for her. Derek tossed out a joke about people who forget where they came from once they get a fat bank account, his eyes flicking to Paige for half a second. Lauren laughed, loud and performative, then turned to Paige mid-cackle, her gaze locking onto hers with a challenge. Paige didn't flinch, didn't blink. She took a slow sip of her coffee, letting the bitterness ground her. She'd learned long ago to keep her face unreadable, to hide the hurt that still clawed at her chest. This wasn't just awkward, it was a calculated performance. And she was the unwilling star. The waiter returned with menus. Leather-bound and ostentatious. Handed out like scripts for a play Paige hadn't auditioned for. Derek flipped his open with a flourish, grinning at Lauren like they were co-conspirators. They got Wagyu here, right? Medium rare. And let's do the lobster too, he said, snapping the menu shut. Oh, and that Bordeaux from Uncle Ray's 60th. Get a bottle for the table. Lauren giggled, adding, you're so predictable, but yeah, make it quick. Paige's eyes stayed on her menu. Not because she was reading, but because she couldn't bear to meet their stares. They hadn't asked what she wanted. They didn't care. This wasn't about dinner, it was about power. About reminding her of her role, the outsider with the deep pockets. Derek leaned back, his smirk lazy. You good with that, Paige? His tone was smooth, like he was doing her a favor by acknowledging her. She blinked once, her voice steady. Sure, sounds like a party. He grinned wider. Knew you'd be down. You always come through. Lauren chimed in, her voice dripping with fake warmth. We should make this night epic. It's not every day we're all together. Her sister, Tara, nodded. Yeah, let's make it one for the books. Go big or go home. Right? The table murmured agreement, and Uncle Vince chuckled. Long as someone's picking up the tab. Paige's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. But she didn't react. Not yet. Then came the moment that tipped the scale. Aunt Carla leaned forward, her voice carrying over the clatter of silverware. Oh, come on. Paige can handle it. She's probably got more in her checking account than we make in a year. Laughter rippled around the table. Soft but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. Tara added, yeah, let our tech princess treat us. That's what family's for, right? Paige's jaw clenched behind her calm facade. They weren't even pretending anymore. What started as veiled digs had morphed into a public spectacle. A group effort to remind her of her place. She could have spoken up, could have called them out, but instead, she raised her coffee cup. Her voice cool and deliberate. To family, she said. They clinked glasses, oblivious to the shift happening inside her. They thought they had her pinned. That she'd sit quietly, take the hits, and pay for the privilege. They had no idea she was rewriting the ending. The rest of the meal unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Appetizers arrived, caviar, truffle fries, foie gras, none of which Paige had ordered. The conversation was all surface, gossip, boasts, toasts to nothing. No one asked about her work, her life, her dreams. Her name only came up in jokes. Each one a reminder that she was a guest in their world. Tolerated but not welcomed, she sat silently, calculating, watching them pour wine and pass plates like they were starring in a movie she'd never auditioned for. They weren't just expecting her to pay the bill. They were making her earn the right to be there. As if her presence was a favor they were granting. Then Lauren's voice cut through again. Sharp and deliberate. You know, she said, brushing non-existent crumbs from her lap. Self-made women are always so detached. Like they forget how to be human. The comment wasn't subtle, and it wasn't meant to be. Derek snorted. Facts. Tara muttered. Preach. Paige didn't look up. She didn't need to. The words hung in the air, heavy with intent. Slowly, she raised her eyes to her mother, Ellen, who shifted uncomfortably, her lips parting just enough to whisper. They don't mean it like that. Paige blinked once, and that was it. Ellen wasn't defending her, she was excusing them. Just like she had when Paige was a kid. When Derek dumped soda in her backpack at her own birthday party. When Lauren mocked her for not fitting in. Be the bigger person, Ellen would say. Don't make it worse. Back then, Paige thought it was love. Now, she saw it for what it was. Surrender. The plates were cleared, and the dessert menus arrived. Tara grinned. Let's get the sampler. Paige's got it. Derek raised an eyebrow. Yeah, 3 of everything. Go hard or go home. The waiter nodded, not even glancing at Paige. As if her role was a given. She took a long breath. Her mind racing. They thought they were clever. Thought they'd cornered her into compliance. But Paige wasn't the quiet girl they remembered. She was something else now. Someone who'd built an empire from scratch. Who'd faced boardrooms and investors without flinching. And she was done playing their game. She leaned back in her chair, her coffee cold now, and scanned the table, not for kindness, not for connection, but for the one face she'd come here for, her mother's. Ellen sat rigid, her eyes darting to the candles. The ceiling. Anywhere but Paige. Paige waited for a glance. A flicker of acknowledgement. Anything to show her mother saw her. Nothing. And that's when it hit. Harder than any of Lauren's jabs or Derek's smirks. The person who was supposed to protect her was complicit in her erasure. The ache wasn't new, but it was final. Paige didn't need to scream. Didn't need to make a scene. She was unraveling. Quietly. Deliberately. And when she stood, it wouldn't be to retreat. It would be to rewrite the story they thought they controlled. The chandelier above the Dominion flame cast a golden glow over the table. But for Paige Harper, it felt like a spotlight exposing a wound. The Dallas steakhouse buzzed with the clatter of silverware and the hum of self-important chatter. But at her family's table, the air was thick with something uglier, entitlement. Laced with mockery, Paige sat on the fringes. Her chair a deliberate exile from the circle. Her black coffee long gone cold. She'd endured their jabs all night. Derek's smug remarks about her wealth. Lauren's pointed toasts to togetherness. And the deafening silence of her mother. Ellen, who refused to meet her eyes. But it was Lauren's latest move that lit the fuse. A carefully curated Instagram story. A boomerang of the family laughing. Glasses raised. Captioned, "Family first. Always." Paige's elbow was barely visible at the frame's edge. Her presence surgically cropped out. Yet she was tagged. A ghost in their perfect narrative. It wasn't an oversight, it was a statement. And Paige was done being their prop. She stood slowly, her heels steady on the marble floor, and walked back to the table. Her face calm but her eyes burning with a clarity that made Lauren's smile falter. The room didn't stop, but it slowed. Diners glanced over, sensing the shift in energy. Paige held up her phone. The Instagram post glowing on the screen. "If you think I'm here for your highlight reel," she said, her voice low but carrying. "You're mistaken." Lauren's mouth opened, but Paige didn't pause. "You want me out of your lives? Do it honestly. Don't tag me for clout while cropping me out of the frame." The table froze. Derek's smirk vanished, replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. Ellen twisted her napkin into knots. Her face pale. "Tara, Lauren's sister," whispered. "Paige, not here." But Paige's gaze didn't waver. "Where, then?" she shot back. "At your next brunch? Or maybe in the group chat you conveniently leave me out of?" The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. A vacuum swallowing their fake laughter. The waiter approached, oblivious to the tension, and placed the leather-bound check in front of Paige with a practiced smile. It landed like a gavel. Final and expectant. Derek leaned back, arms crossed, his voice dripping with mock nonchalance. "You got this, right, Paige? It's pocket change for you." The bill was a monument to their greed. $3.247 for Wagyu lobster, vintage Bordeaux, and desserts she hadn't touched. Paige's fingers brushed the folder. Her movements deliberate. She didn't open it right away, letting their anticipation hang like a held breath. Derek's eyes narrowed, Lauren shifted uncomfortably, and Ellen's hands trembled around her empty wineglass. They thought they'd won. That Paige would fold, pay, and slink away as always. They were wrong. She opened the bill, glanced at the total, and closed it with a soft snap. Then, with a slow, almost theatrical grace, she slid it across the table to Derek. The room seemed to hold its breath. "What's this?" he asked. His voice tight, like she'd just appended his entire script. Paige met his stare, her tone cool as steel. "You thought I was covering this? That's adorable." Lauren's eyes flashed. "Come on, Paige, don't make a scene." Tara chimed in. "We all agreed this was your night. You said, to family, remember?" Paige's lips curved. Not a smile but a blade. "That was before you edited me out of your family photo." Lauren looked away, her bravado crumbling. Tara snapped. "Fine, we'll split it, but not with her. She's not family." The word cracked in the air. drawing gasps from nearby tables. The Dominion flame wasn't used to this kind of raw honesty. And neither was her family. Paige stood, her movements unhurried, and let her gaze sweep the table. You keep saying I'm not family, she said, her voice steady but laced with a quiet fury. Let me make it easy for you. She stepped back, just one step, enough to mark the boundary. You're right, I don't belong here, not because I've changed, but because I've outgrown your game. Ellen's lips parted, a soft, Paige, escaping. But Paige shook her head, silencing her. You wanted me to sit quietly and pay for the privilege of being disrespected. That's not family, that's a transaction, Derek muttered. Don't be dramatic. But Paige turned to him, her eyes like ice. It's not drama, it's a receipt. You've been cashing in on me for years. This is your balance due. With that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking a steady rhythm against the floor. The silence behind her was louder than any insult. A void that swallowed their smugness. She didn't owe them noise, only distance. As she reached the door, Ellen's voice broke through, soft and desperate. Paige. But Paige didn't stop. She pushed the door open and stepped into the Dallas night. The air cooler now, freeing her from the weight of their expectations. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes what you need is the dignity of choosing yourself. Back in her loft, the city skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows, Paige felt the weight of the night settle into her bones. Her phone buzzed, an incoming call from Ellen. She let it ring, her thumb hovering over the screen, torn between the girl who once craved her mother's approval and the woman who knew better. When she finally answered, Ellen's voice was fragile, cracking like thin ice. Paige, sweetheart, are you okay? I know tonight was rough. They're not bad people, just, they don't know how to handle your success. You've always been stronger than them. Paige leaned against the counter, her eyes on the ceiling. Is that what this is? She asked quietly. Me being punished for doing well? Ellen fumbled. No, baby, I'm saying you're better than this. You can handle it. The words were meant as praise. But they landed like a plea, another request to swallow the hurt. To be the bigger person. Paige hung up, her chest tight but her resolve intact. The next morning, a text from Ellen waited. Paige, don't make this about you. Think of the family name. Just help them out this once. The words shattered the fragile hope Paige had clung to. Ellen hadn't called to mend anything, she'd called to soften Paige up for another round of sacrifice. Paige typed her reply, her fingers steady. I'm not your scapegoat anymore. She hit send. No punctuation, no room for misinterpretation. The phone went dark, and Paige stepped into her living room. The silence no longer heavy but earned. 2 days later, a voicemail from Ellen arrived. Her voice softer, rawer. Paige, I don't expect forgiveness. I know I made it worse. I was scared. It's not an excuse. But if you never come back, I still love you. Paige played it twice, her eyes stinging not from pain but from the rarity of her mother offering something without asking for anything in return. She didn't reply, not out of anger, but because she needed space to heal, to let the scars of her family's rejection become part of her skin. Not her story. That night, Paige opened her laptop, her startup's dashboard glowing with metrics of success she'd built without a single favor. She met her reflection in the screen, her eyes steady. I didn't lose them, she whispered. I found me. She closed the laptop and stepped onto her balcony, a glass of Pinot Noir in hand. Dallas stretched out before her, its lights indifferent to her family's drama, offering her the freedom to exist on her own terms. Her phone buzzed again, a photo from Lauren, the family around a fire pit, toasting marshmallows, captioned, real ones only. Paige didn't open it. She set the phone face down and leaned against the railing, the city's pulse syncing with her own. Family doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Loyalty shouldn't cost your soul. And silence, when it comes from strength, can rewrite everything.